Julie, which
谢谢 Doreen， 也谢谢现场还留在这里陪我们的所有观众朋友们。大家好，我是 E-Times EDN Asia 台湾的主编 Judith， 我担任今天这场 panel 的主持人。那今天呢也特别荣幸因为今天是4月22号地球日，可能很多人都知道。那我们能够在地球日这样一个特别的日子来讨论这个话题，让我觉得特别的荣幸。那我们今天呢也特别邀请到了就是来自业界不同领域的重量级专家来跟大家分享目前就是在 EV 设计以及基础充电设施上面的一些最近的进展。那希望今天大家都能有很丰富的收获。那在正式开始之前呢，我也跟大家分享几个我最近看到的数据哦。很多人可能在想，以台湾来说，现在好像电动车的能见度非常的高，那到底台湾现在有多少辆电动车呢？我来跟大家分享一些最新的统计数据哦。我们现在在台湾大概有800万辆的就是挂牌的4轮车辆，那其中呢大概有2万辆左右是纯电动车。那在机车2轮的部分呢，我们现在全台湾大概有1400万辆的就是挂牌2轮机车，那其中有
550,000 motorbikes are EVs. And among the 20,000 in EVs, 60% show up only in the past 2 years, and therefore it's coming to the market very quickly. As for our EV charging infrastructure, there are about 1,000 pieces of infrastructure in Taiwan, so there is a big room for improvement, and charging station or home-based charging piles are increasing as well. Therefore, I believe that the market is very promising. According to the latest stats, around the world, when we talk about EV structure and its market scale, the number is as high as 14.6 million US dollars, which presents great opportunities. Now, I would like to introduce to you our panelists. First, Mr. Richard Yan, who is the Senior Vice President of Global Vertical Industries and Sales Support Team from Altair. Would you like to introduce yourself? Hello, I'm Richard Yan. I serve Altair USA for the past 33 years. I've been in charge of different sectors, electronics, heavy industry, vehicles, and so on. And my role is to understand the challenges faced by the customers and help them find the solutions so that we can provide the best services. And I look forward to our discussions later. Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Yan. Next to Mr. Yan is Mr. MingYu Jiang, Senior Product and Business Manager from Delta. Hello, I am MingYu Jiang. I am in charge of the electronic vehicle charging solution in Delta. I joined Delta 10 years ago, and I started in my role there working on EV charging. It is my honor to be able to witness the rise of the EV markets. 10 years ago, there were only maybe 10 to 20,000 EVs around the world, and now there are more than 6 million. So this is a huge market indeed. Thank you, Mr. John. The next, Mr. Eric Wong, Director of Vehicle Electronics Division from US Energy. Hello. I am Eric Wong from US Energy. It is my pleasure to be here at the forum. US Energy was created in 2010. I think we were one of the first companies that started services for EV charging. In the past 10 to 12 years, we've developed many 2B or 2C experience in serving the charging and industry for the EVs. It is my honor to be here so that we can share with you our own experience in the market. Thank you, Eric. Then right next to me is Mr. Jason Huang, Executive Vice President from LSC. Hello, I am Jason. I'm in charge of product line and supply chain management at LSC. LSC is a startup. We have only about 2 years of history. Our main focus is light EV solutions. So we help car manufacturers to develop light EVs. Another part of our business is to support the entire EV ecosystem. We are able to develop partnerships with many other companies. Some of our projects cover a charging station, charging piles. We provide services as well. Compared to other panelists, LSC is a younger company, but we too believe that this is a very promising market, and I look forward to our discussions later. Thank you, Jason. And then right next to me, you probably heard his keynote this morning, Dr. Richard Xu, Secretary General of TAGET. It is my honor to be here again. I serve the Taiwan Association of Green Energy Transition right now. I also lead a team to help develop green energy. And I really look forward to see more and more charging infrastructure for green and energy. And we look forward to a two-way connection to the grid when it comes to charging, so that when vehicle users are connected to the grid, they can obtain more benefits than just power. So it is my pleasure to be here to exchange my views with all of the panelists. Thank you very much. So we have a very strong lineup, a very diverse lineup. There are charging suppliers, service providers, and Association of Green Energy. We will together talk about green energy and charge infrastructure. Now, my first question to all of you is that we do see that electrification of vehicles is a very obvious trend. So on the streets, you may spot one or two EVs with one glance. So, Mr. Yan, a question for you is that in the electrification of vehicles, especially in this industry, in the past several years, charging is important, and hopefully the EVs will become more and more sustainable. Are there any challenges in designing new green EVs? I think when we talk about the design of EVs, you may think of the four wheels at the beginning, but in fact, this is a carrier, or this is a vehicle of total electrification. Well, batteries have been in our life for decades, but with the development of EVs, we're seeing a bigger room for development for batteries. Now, I visit many car manufacturers around the world, and I always ask them, what differentiates you? Many car manufacturers are developing EVs. What differentiates you? And all of the manufacturers told me that performance has to be the first, and it has to be cost efficient. It has a fast time to market, but you have to strike a balance. It doesn't mean that all of the companies can reach all of the goals with one try. And striking the balance is the most important part. And Altair is a global technology company. Our vision is to help the automakers to have a good design solution and process. Our vision is to use computerized simulators along with a high-performance calculation, which can be cloud-based, plus AI and machine learning we combine all of these elements to change the speed of these automakers when they make decisions. Later on, I may want to talk some of the details as well, because there are different subsystems and there are different design aspects of these systems. But I'll stop here. Thank you very much, Richard. Of course, in addition to EV, another focus of ours today is charging infrastructure. So there are home-based or public charging infrastructure. And do we have sufficient software and hardware already? Are there any other challenges too? So, Mr. Jiang from Delta, would you like to address this question? Of course. On charging infrastructure, well, we can talk about charging pile or charging station first. There should be complementary software and hardware, of course. You may have seen there are different charging specs. And there are technical specs, basic requirements when it comes to charging piles. In the past several years, there has been globalized standardization of this infrastructure already. So I believe that we have, I can say that, a mature set of charging specs. Of course, there are trade-offs. So some regions, some countries choose their own priorities. And therefore, it may be difficult for all of the markets to go to the same direction. But when I come back to the basic infrastructure requirements, I think there isn't so-called a perfect solution, but there's always a better solution. If we're seeing a charging pile as part of the infrastructure, what we want to achieve is to help charge the EVs as soon or as quickly as possible. And to do that, we need to be able to dissipate heat as soon as possible, to have better power conversion rates, to have more advanced hardware specifications so that the charging experience as a whole really contribute to a better green energy and will experience. Because in the process of charging, maybe some energy is lost and wasted, so there's always room for improvement. We have to continue to pursue better performance, better conversion, less loss of power during conversion, so that we're able to achieve zero carbon transportation and to bring the future to the present. Thank you. I believe that Yes Energy has much experience as well, especially in the actual application of charging piles, right? Eric Wong, would you like to share your thoughts? Yes. The hardware parts of a charging pile, that is a strong suit of Taiwan. I think Delta has started that quite early on. So we in Taiwan are leading the world, in fact, in these regards. But in the past, there were very few charging stations, and there were only hardware equipment such as connectors. But now there are more and more EVs. So the management people or the users have higher and higher expectations towards charging stations and charging piles. And that's why there are all kinds of different back-end systems and management systems. And Yes Energy joined this market quite early on. We provided 2B services at the beginning. Recently, we started to serve the end users, the car owners. So we were able to address different needs. We have developed different software and pieces of equipment. There could be closed system for management, or there could be a cross-platform, cloud-based system, and so on. We're able to develop systems that cater to different use scenarios. With the charging piles and our software, I believe that we're able to satisfy all kinds of customers.
Thank you, Eric. So maybe Mr. Huang from LSC can give us some comment, please. Yes, because at the beginning when we're designing the services for light vehicles, we put that into consideration. And in the process of development, we thought that if we want to provide comprehensive services so that our customers can expect what kind of time and go-to-market risk, and that they can put that into consideration. So we want to provide a total solution that can boost the future collaboration, and especially for an industry that is going to boom in the next generation. And for charging operators, and now they focus not only on two-wheel but also four-wheel vehicle, not only limited to light vehicles. So now we work together with some smaller charging operators, and they are able to work together with charging pile operators, and they can engage with them. However, they cannot deliver comprehensive services. So they do need some of the help so that they can arrange how they can establish these charging piles so that their investment can have a good return, and they can deliver the users, including the app user flow and the other services. So we make this a service model into a product line, meaning that we can lower the entrance limitation so that our infrastructure can enjoy more options in terms of the choices infrastructure. And starting from concept to engage and to go live, we want to make sure that our users can use these charging piles. The overall development process only takes about 2 months. And we play a role that we have many very strong facility developers, and we also have very good developing environment and a very good consumption ability to foster the development of these companies. So if we want to make more consumers to use these services, the infrastructure can not only rely on single industry or only rely on the government. We just have to lower the entrance bar to enter the market, so the operators can focus on how they can provide services to their end customers. But for solution providers like us, what we can do is that we can play the role of integrator so that the services can deliver to the market very quickly. So from our perspective, we expect that there will be a lot of companies that want to provide different solutions and provide solutions in different scale. You will see a lot of EVs on the street. And now what we're doing is that we are working our best to increase both supply and demand. Because now we're working with some smaller operators. Maybe they do not have the in-house ability to develop their technologies. However, we can provide our service so that it can go live very quickly. Thank you, Jason. And Dr. Xu, can you give us a conclusion? It seems that we already have the hardware and the software solutions, and technology is not the issue. And what we can do, what are the challenges do we have to make a more friendly environment for the development of EV? Yes. So for the next step, what kind of what can we do to utilize the software and hardware we have, and so that we can integrate it into a very good and comprehensive ecosystem? I would like to echo what the other participant says. Our goal is to make everyone move. So everybody has the opportunity to participate in the development. So in EV, maybe we want to advance better. We want to do more R&D. And on top of that, we want to develop an environment that in Taiwan, we want to create a very comfortable and a convenient scenario for EV use in Taiwan so that we can be the example for the world. So the EV industry here in Taiwan, we can have a very good environment so that we can persuade the rest of the world how we can use, what is the good scenario to use EV. So you can think about it. In the past, we talked about the V2G, and we thought that is the dream that can never come true. However, last year, the V2G, the biggest V2G project, it started last year in Taiwan. Although it can only achieve part of our goal, however, we see that as long as we can design a good mechanism, it is true that we can make these potential manufacturers or even some smaller companies that can also participate in the development of the industry. And Mr. Yan also mentioned that V2H or V2B, and this is something that can happen earlier than expected, and that is also true. So when we are seeing these vehicles, EVs, on the street, and we see that the more possibilities, how we can build the grid and how the power charging facilities, and we have to think about different perspectives, how we can control or how we can provide the provide power solutions better. And we don't only rely on Thai Power Company, and we can try to achieve this goal from different perspective. And we want to create different scenarios. So once we have these all different scenarios, so that we can make the industry for a brighter future. And we believe that each step of the way, all the experience we have, they all play a very important role in the as we march towards the future goal. Yes, and our imagination for EV is completely different from what we expected for EV in the past. In the past, we might think that EV is just to make the combustion motor into an electric one. However, in the future, our expectation for EV is even more. For EV, it can be our transportation, and it can also be a very important partner. For example, if you are short of power and you can get the power from your EV, so EV can be a very important partner, and that you can sell the excessive power from your EV back to the grid. However, the design of EV is still very important. And so the next question is for Mr. Yan from Altair. So if we focus on the efficiency of EV and the environmental friendly perspective, we have to put into consideration how it can work together with the other infrastructure. So can you give us some comments from your perspective, how we can overcome some technical challenges? I think from the perspective of car design, EV design, I think efficiency is the key word for EV. When we talk about design, efficiency is the key. However, we had this issue of efficiency in the past, but now it is becoming more serious because now we need a high voltage and a high current. If we have high voltage, there will be heat generated, and the heat issue, we need to solve the issues, and with some, for example, vibration issues, and we need to solve these issues with physical solutions. So in order to resolve these issues, if we want to make EV more efficient, we need to have high performance a calculator in the cloud to calculate these performances, and more importantly, how we can find an optimized design. in between, because for cars has different systems. So we can have simulation from the cloud. We can get information from different places, and we can combine these information with the information that we get from testing. So for major car manufacturers, what they're doing is that they are trying to collect information from the model of machine learning. So if you're the chief designer, and when you are designing a system, what do you want the system to be? So when you're reviewing the system, what do you want to achieve the most? I believe that will be that we see different issues raised by different people in different industries. I want to be able to negotiate or coordinate the possibilities to make the success rate to be 80% or 90%. So that I know how close we are to the goal that we can be successful. So starting from cloud computing, we once we get the data plus the data we have obtained from testing, and we put these information into machine learning and to build a model so that the model can help the chief designer to make adjustment to the design parameters. So if we can use these information and to shorten the development time and to optimize the design, I believe this is going to be helpful. Thank you. I believe that for the EV design in the future, we will consider more about the scenario. So now let's switch focus on the charging piles and how can we make the charging piles more convenient and more efficient. I would like to echo what Mr. Yan just said. So now we're having the trend of digital design. We now face different parameters, external parameters, and different demands and different scenarios. Now we can see that the charging piles, we are using the same logic.
Everyone hopes that they can accelerate the time to develop, and therefore simulation is important in the initial phases as well as collecting users' experience. From Delta's perspective and from Yes Energy's perspective as operators, it is necessary for us to understand the charging behavior of consumers. How fast do they want charging to be? At what time do they charge? How they use the charging stations, what kind of interface they prefer. And all of that kind of information can be fed back to our simulations. So we can continue to improve user experience. Also, we can conduct interoperability tests across the board for different models of cars with deeper understanding, with more exchanges of information. We can enable the interoperability between cars and charging stations as well as charging piles. That's a common goal for most of the developers because major automakers will continue to roll out dozens of new EV models. They may use different platforms. They have different brands. But we want to provide the most convenient experience for the customers, for the consumers. So interoperability is important as well as time to market. To do that, we need to collect data and information and turn that information into a design prototype. Thank you very much. I think Mr. Yan was very modest, saying that he's not an expert in charging pile, but I believe that in the future, automakers will definitely have deeper cooperation with developers. Now, Eric from Yes Energy. I think Yes Energy has much experience in interacting with consumers. For vendors that deploy the charging piles for customers' needs, what's your expectation or what's your view on future developments? Well, I don't have the best answer to the question raised by our moderator. Well, based on what the other panelists have said already, we know that cars will continue to evolve. In the past, one EV can only run for 150 kilometers, and now they are capable of running 400 or 500 kilometers. And the charging behavior for these two kinds of vehicles are very different. Charging piles in the past, we only have 25 or 30 kilowatts, which is smaller scale charging pile. But now with advanced technology, we have 100 to 150 or up to 300 kilowatt charging station. And all of these changes make the experience of charging very different from the users. And as operators, we keep a close eye on the changes. The reason being that we sell equipment, develop system, and we also do system integration. But other than that, we also deploy charging stations. We think this is important because when investing a charging station, it's like you are creating a gas station. It's very investment intensive. You have to sign a contract that lasts for 8 to 10 years. So the direction of this investment is very important. We want to make sure that it's the right direction. Before October last year, Tesla car owners in Taiwan can enjoy free charging when they use the supercharging piles. Tesla has chosen several good locations for their supercharging stations, and usually they operate up to their full capacity because there are so many users. But now Tesla started to charge users for that, and all of a sudden less car owners want to use these supercharging stations. But where do they go? Does it mean that their cars no longer require electricity? Of course not. But because supercharging stations start to charge fees, the users would turn to other stations that are less expensive and more convenient. In the past 2 years, central and local governments want to encourage the use of EVs. So they have rolled out new laws and regulations. For example, a government bureau which is in charge of construction in Taiwan promote a new regulation and says that all of the new buildings have to allocate a special area in the building for charging stations. So more and more new buildings start to treat charging piles as part of their public infrastructure or basic infrastructure. So in the future, more and more users will be able to charge their vehicles at home. They don't have to go to external charging stations that frequently. 3 to 5 years ago, the EVs can only run 150 kilometers, but now they're capable of running for 500 kilometers, as I said earlier. So they don't have to be charged as often as before. And these shift change how users charge their vehicles. So Yes Energy always keeps our fingers on the pulse of the market because that has a lot to do with our future investment plans. As of now, the charging behavior of EV car owners have not be written into the stone. They may continue to change with the changes of technology, with other changes. The car owners' dependency on external charging stations will change. And as the green energy operator in Taiwan, we will keep an eye on the changes, but of course, we will always try to address the needs of the consumers. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Yes, in Taiwan, from the upstream operator and developer to the downstream users, we have a common expectation. Taiwan doesn't have a big market, but I think we have a very flexible supply chain. What do you think, Jason? I think I can look at this issue from two perspectives. First, on the design and development of vehicles. EV is a new form of carrier or new vehicle. We talk about integration of power, of electronics and mechanic elements. Now it has to integrate speed charging too. So we are able to do research and development on motors and controllers. We can work with equipment vendors and developers to roll out better pieces of equipment. I think all in all, what we deliver is not a component, but an overall solution. We think this mindset helps us to develop our business as a company, because in designing the vehicles, what is being designed is the entire system. We said car manufacturers collect all of the components and then assemble all of the components and then deliver a car. Well, for the EV business, these process is not as mature as traditional cars, so we have to deliver a total solution. For charging, for inputting power or outputting power, what we pursue is the momentary performance and how such performance can last. LC was created about 2 years ago, and we believe that the new mindset will be accepted in a day. Car manufacturers will not always look for components, so they're looking at integration. On penetration rate of two-wheel or four-wheel vehicles, the current percentage of that shift from traditional vehicles to EVs is still quite low. So we need more solutions. We need different players so that the supply chain can become more efficient, and so is the ecosystem. For products that become more and more mature, we do see that different vendors will start to have different specializations in order to make the supply chain more efficient. Well, we hope to reach that systematic process as well. Second, we integrate software and hardware. And under commercial application, what we deliver is not only the vehicle, but the software and the cloud-based platform, as well as other mobile services. We can customize such services depending on what customers need. Eric said something very important. That is, the charging behavior of consumers have not settled down yet. When we create some models, what we do is that we work with the charging station developers and operators, and many of them are small operators. So we ask them where they are, where their locations are, and we tell them what their advantages will be in that location. We conduct some big data analysis and share our insights with the small-scale operators to show them where can bring them more benefits, and if they want to scale up, which locations they should expand to. So we have to have a good understanding of the EV charging station and the network. But what we're really clear about is that this model is never complete. It will continue to change and evolve. If home charging becomes better and better in the future, people have different expectations or probably less need for a public charging station. So it will continue to iterate. We can't rely on one solution or one model. We need to continue to look back. We need to continue to evolve. So when deciding the locations initially, the risk is quite low because you have few locations. It's not very risky, but if you want to expand to more locations, it will become more risky. You will see more players in the deployment of charging piles. So moving on, the operators need our help to understand which locations are the best locations for their investments, and the utilization rates of those locations will be the highest among all potential locations. So we accumulate smaller scale data into big data. We create model that can conduct advanced calculation so that we are able to create scenarios for future charging. I think there are many topics to be discussed in the industry. Many of the topics have not been fully discussed, and many tasks are not carried out yet. But when more and more players are willing to join, we'll be able to develop a better ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. It's true that the LSC has witnessed a lot of business opportunities lying here. And the next question is that a lot of people believe that the ICT industry has developed very well here in Taiwan. And in the EV ecosystem or the charging industry, what role can we play? Where do we stand? And what is the business opportunity we have? We hear that the technology comes from humanity. However, we need technologies to drive the science to go forward. We know that Taiwan is leading in terms of the technology, and we need to imagine that what else we can do. For example, how can we manage the energy better, and smart management of the grid, and how can we integrate better? And this is where the opportunities lie. And let me be more specific. I would like to echo what Eric just said. Charging behaviors have been changing. And personally, and maybe we can just bet on it, that in terms of home charging or community charging, this it seems that the grid management, fragmented grid management is becoming more and more important, because as the grid goes, at the end, it will go to community and it will go to family. However, this is where the blue ocean is, because a lot of people haven't been really thinking about it. And the people are thinking about where they can place these charging piles, and it's difficult to install these charging piles into communities because there are a lot of limitations, or people have different opinions, and they're afraid of the risks of these charging piles installed in the community. So if we can combine the management of these charging piles and the charging behaviors, and we want to make sure that people are convinced that these charging piles are safe, because no matter where you go, you may go to remote places and you charge your vehicles there. However, at the end, you will have to go home. And if we have these charging piles installed in the communities, and if we can overcome these difficulties, and this is where the opportunities lie. However, we don't see many people are researching the possibilities of making it happen. So we also expect that because of this forum, now we see a lot of different players in this room, and that we can work together towards that possibility. Because for technologies, business opportunities will drive the technologies forward. And we do want to see more smart technologies being involved in the development of the industry. And we do want to know the owner of these EV vehicles, what are their pain points are. Is it safety? And if it is safety issues, we can overcome that with technologies. If it's energy efficiency, if that is the pain point, for example, the heat issues, is it possible that we use the current technologies we have, or the R&D possibilities we have to have better energy management? And we can even help our customers to make money. And these are all the possibilities we can think of. And this is not only a slogan. We do need a very comprehensive technology structure to overcome these difficulties. Yes, and Dr. Shi mentioned that on top of EV itself and a charging pile itself, we can look from a broader mind and to look for other opportunities. Next question for Mr. Yan, because you've been in the automobile industry for so many years. From your observation, the Taiwanese players, what are their strengths in the EV industry? Well, we can say that when I was in the U.S., I was in Detroit in Michigan. A lot of Taiwanese companies, they want to enter the U.S. market. I contacted a lot of Taiwanese companies. They want to try to build connections with the Tier 1 automakers in the U.S. I would suggest the Taiwanese companies in this ecosystem in particular, there are two questions you have to ask yourself. How you can differentiate yourselves from other competitors. I always ask them, maybe one company, and I just ask the company, so I know who your competitor is and how you can differentiate yourself from your competitor. Once I read your brochure, and I ask them that if you change your company logo and to your competitor's logo, and then you read your brochure again, what do you think? A lot of times we have to think about the differentiation, how you differentiate yourself with your competitor. And Dr. Xu also mentioned about the G2H and different possibilities to make money, and also your profit, how you can profit. This is very important. We know that in Taiwan, the government provides subsidies to the Taiwanese Taiwanese companies. This is just the beginning, but once you want to explore other markets, how you can profit, what is your business model? This is something that you have to look into it. Maybe it's your product strategy. And if it's product strategy, this is where your strength is. Then you have to think about your business model. Where does the profit come come from. So Taiwan is a small market, but this is a very good beginning. And once you try to enter different markets, no matter which country you go, no matter which industry you want to go in, these are the issues you have to think about. Yes, thank you. And one very important point you mentioned is that how you can build a differentiated solutions. And I believe Yes Energy is very experienced, especially judging from your recent success in Taiwanese market. So what is the possibility for Taiwanese players using Taiwanese model to compete in overseas market? What do you think? For EV industry in the past few years, and if we differentiate vehicles, EV into electric scooters, cars, and the bus, we believe that the supply chain and the value chain for electric scooters are more comprehensive compared to other vehicles. You see e-scooters starting from upstream makers, and they can get the subsidy and the tax return from the government, and that there are also some other incentive programs from the central government and the local government, and also the charging infrastructure. They also have the support from the government. So in terms of value chain, e-scooter is having more comprehensive value chain compared to others. And we also have very well-known brands. And in the development process, we see pretty good results, including Yes Energy. We also see that a lot of Southeast Asian countries, they also come to Taiwan and try to copy the success we have, and that they try to contact the upstream makers and to the system developers at the downstreams. So it seems that for e-scooter, we have a relatively good example. And for e-bus, and the subsidy strategy, it's only became more comprehensive 2 years ago. And you see that now we see the overall industry is becoming more comprehensive. Just like Dr. Xu said, that there are business opportunities there. And so for vehicle and the e-bus, and we see that some big companies, they also try to make the first e-car, e-vehicle, they choose to make e-bus as their first e-vehicle. So we do hope that we can see the development to be have a more speedy development. But for electric vehicles, four-wheel vehicles, it is the subsidies or the supporting strategies is relatively slower compared to other industry. And just like the Vice President just said, that for EV in Taiwan, we have comprehensive supply chain. We just don't have a integrator in between. And this is my observation for this industry. So for EV, we do believe that there is still room for improvement. Thank you. Maybe Jason, you can share with us your view from the perspective of light vehicle, because you're very experienced in this regard. Yes, I think what Taiwan's strength is that we don't worry that we can't find a solution. This is never a problem for us. And maybe there is one component lacking. We can, our first reaction is that, okay, we can try to find a component for you. We don't worry that we can't find it for you. So we normally, we can find a solution or find the components for our customers. And for quality management, whether the solution is suitable, this is another level of perspective. However, what Taiwan is strong about is we have very good ICT industry. So at the beginning, we talked about fossil-free. That is just the beginning of the industry development. But for the following steps, no matter it's the mobile models or it will be digitized. It's not only from using combustion engines and to electric engines. There are a lot of different things that will happen at the same time. Maybe we didn't have enough users, and now we are more ready than before. We can get the big data, and now we are still in this process. However, there was one keyword which I believe was true. We don't worry that we can't find any component or whether there is any technology not available. However, we do not have a total solution, or we don't have the role that can deliver a total solution or a comprehensive integrator. So this is what we are lacking of. At this point of time, when the penetration rate is still very low, we do hope that there are a lot of competitors, and so that we do the same thing, so that we can have a better infrastructure. And no matter when we're developing a new car, and we can enjoy lower cost and to have faster go-to-market speed, and so we will be able to have a better infrastructure. And so, of course, the support from the government is one thing very important. However, in the industry, there are still a lot of things we can do. And this is what we have observed. And we believe that the development will divide it into different stages. And just like I said, now we do hope to see more EVs, and more competitors, and more charging piles. But there will be time when we have a lot of charging piles already, and the demand is becoming weaker, and at that time we will have to work on this industry in a smarter way. But no, we were not there yet. We need more competitors. We need more players in the industry. We need more users, and we need more business models here. Yes, and I think the standardization of technology is also very important. So, for example, the charging connectors, there are a lot of different specs. And for standardization, is this something that we can focus on in the Taiwanese market? Maybe Mr. Jiang? Yes, for Taiwan, we are in terms of EV development, we are or the sales of EVs, we are not really leading the world. But what we can, the good thing is that we can observe what happened in other markets. For example, in Europe or in North America, they have more EVs. And for these two markets, it's clear that for charging specifications, and they are pretty fast in terms of standardize their charging specification. So they speed up the charging infrastructure, and the standardization is also helpful. In Taiwan, I think in the environment like what we have, we hope that for the charging spec, we hope that we can see more standardized development.
So for end users, when they purchase vehicles, for developers, when they deploy their infrastructure, I think standardization will be a big help. In Taiwan, we are standing in the initial phase of the development of charging infrastructure. We are still observing what charging scenarios will become mainstream in the future. When we observe the history of charging in other countries, we see that public charging and home charging have been developing at the same time. Public charging relies on public subsidies. So they don't have a high expectation for ROI because they can rely on government subsidies. However, for home charging operators, they have to be more careful with their ROIs, keeping a keen eye on their return on their investment. In home charging, we're looking at more complicated buildings or complex instead of just houses, because the houses are simple. But for buildings, the infrastructure is more complicated. So we encourage developers to come up with an initial comprehensive plan. They can prepare for the need in the future from the perspective of software, hardware, and the combination of both. So they may need to change the most appropriate charging piles. You don't have to actually install all of these piles in the future, but it is really important to devise a comprehensive plan so that you don't have to change your design every 2-3 years, because that would be very costly. On the aspect of software, power consumption is definitely critical. Therefore, operators and many startups are very interested in developing a better design of power use. But of course, they have to work with Taipower, the main distributor of power in Taiwan. So players have to make plans in advance that will speed up the development of the market. Through initial comprehensive planning, you will be able to reach most cost effectiveness, and that will contribute to better development of the overall infrastructure. How about yes energy? What's your view? Do you think people already have a good understanding of how they should deploy the infrastructure? Yes, I think so. With better understanding of the market, now players will have a clear view on what initial investment and plan they have to make. They will also go through some experiments as well. I think it was mentioned earlier that we believe that the prevalence of home charging will be very important for the prevalence of EV in the future. And many new construction development plans are going to deliver their buildings in 2-3 years. And the homeowners and the users of EV will become more and more in the next 2-3 years. So some developers have parking space for 60 to 80 cars, so they plan to install 60 to 80 charging piles for each of the space. What we provide to a developer is 7 kilowatts and 32 amps equipment. When property developers devise their plan, they go for 60 to 80 amp. So you have a charging pile, but it needs energy that's nearly half of the household demand. So if you install the pile for every parking space, it's going to be very costly and very complicated engineering-wise. Maybe some of these buildings will only be delivered after 2-3 years, and it's impossible that all the 60 or 80 car owners have chosen EVs. So at the one hand, we want to see more EV owners, but we also want to strike a good balance. So we have a total management system. The developers only need to apply for what they need. We are able to supply as high as 100 amps, and the EVs will have to finish their charging before the next EV can start charging. Or we can divide the charging power among several vehicles, but it's going to take longer time for each EV to be fully charged. So that's how differently you can make plans. And the plan is safe. As of now, property developers can accept this kind of planning. In fact, they respond very well to this kind of flexible planning. Thank you, Eric. We do hope that Taiwan will become a good demo site for two-wheel or four-wheel EV for the world. It takes complementary measures. And Dr. Xu, I think you have some of your views on this regard. I suppose on policy side, on regulations, what's your view? As other panelists mentioned, if Taiwan has a good scenario for EV application, what we can obtain from this process is data and know-how. In the new energy scenario, which incorporates EVs, I think we have the best edges because Taiwan is a relatively smaller place, and the buildings, the property, the houses, and the grid are very much connected. It doesn't require new large-scale infrastructure. We already have the infrastructure in place when it comes to the grid and the connection. So the know-how and the data we collect will be a great contributor for Taiwan to enter the global market in EV. And our association continues to work hard. We want the grid to be smarter, to be two-way, to be able to communicate with different devices. For home charging, for example, how do we choose the charging philosophy? How do we choose the charging method? To choose the best way, we need to know how vehicles behave, how much power they want. We also want the grid to, or we also want the vehicles to know that what's the best time for them to charge or to discharge so that they can benefit. Sometimes the Taipower doesn't want the users to charge from their grid. Then if users instead discharge the energy back to the grid, maybe they can get some reward. So that's the insight we want to provide the users. So there should be good business models. The operators will only go into the market if there's a good business model. They know that. If they develop such a model, they can help their customers to make profit. So the government can provide more data or even deregulate the management of the grid. That will help the development of the charging industry. It's, I know, challenging because the security of the grid is a national security concern. Companies such as Delta Electronics continue to safeguard their services and network so that there's nothing missed, there's no margin for errors. And plus smart management, I believe that there are good opportunities. I think many of the participants here have the same question as I do. When can we see EV a big moneymaker? Well, speaking of this, we need to partner with charging pile operators, developers. We have to have a community-based management system. Then we can make money now. We don't have to wait. Because Thai Power can provide special prices for smart users. And now there's a power auction platform for different users to buy the power they need at an economical prices. And today is the Earth Day. So in response to the Climate Change Act, Delta has some measures right now to provide different price accounts. We support the time of use price. So when the price is low, vehicles can charge. And when the price is high, the users of vehicles will, of course, want to keep the power for themselves to use. So users can save money if we have such a flexible and balanced approach of charging or discharging. Your EV can play different roles. Throughout the 24 hours time of the day, a smart system can help regulate the use of the power. With the time of use price, users will be able to make the most profits and use the cheapest power. So I think saving money is already achievable. We don't have to wait for another 5 to 10 years. But by 2025 or 2027, I know many players would have done more developments. There will be more software and hardware. By 2025 or 2027, we will see more V2H or V2V or even V2G protocols. The EVs will be able to communicate very well with the grid. And by then, EV will be a bread earner for a family, maybe. And EV could even be a good investment if power becomes a business. So to do that, we need to have better technologies and higher efficiency. We look forward to that more players join the market together.
Thank you, Dr. Xu. So for EV, no matter it's two-wheel or four-wheel EV, so on top of the car system itself, we also attach great importance to how it works together with the natural environment. Maybe we can hear the comment from Jason. Is it possible that Taiwan can be the demo site for the world? So for this topic, this is something that we don't have to limit ourselves with four-wheel or two-wheel. And just like Dr. Shi said, we see different scenarios. And what our observation is that you can imagine that for EV, this is something that will continue to evolve. And this is the trend that will have no doubt. This is something that will happen. We will see more EVs on the street. There will be more batteries that need to be produced. And for a cell or battery supply, we might have to fight for them. and there will be more devices that need to be charged. So at this point of time, we don't have to worry about these issues. But in the future, at sometime in the future, there will be we will face limitations from grid because the maybe we do not have the infrastructure for charging piles. So at different stage, and there will be different electric price, and the differentiation will be even more because there will be peak hours or rush hours, and there will be differences. And we face different choices, whether we want to have 4-wheel EV or 2-wheel EV. So just like chargers before, this chargers in the past was used to charge our laptop and computers, and later on it is used for mobile phones. The mechanism will happen. And how do we respond to these involvement? We have to calculate, and we have to plan for ourselves in 5 years. What do we have to do? What kind of scenarios will happen? And how can we echo that to our behaviors? And we said that we prepare to be smart. And now we don't have to be too smart, and we won't make mistakes. But it was in the past, but now we have to calculate, and we don't calculate by ourselves, by our own human brains. We use big data, so that big data calculation can tell us what the most suitable behavior should be, what is the best way, optimized way to use electricity and to enjoy the lowest price and to have the lowest cost. We collect different information and collect the data. We hope that we can provide these solutions to different companies. And this is something that we're doing, but we're not doing enough. Because for big data, it has its limitation. Everybody is working on big data. And if the big data is not communicating with each other, they're just data. But for specific questions, it requires specific answers. So once we see that some of the topics become more and more important, then we will find that maybe in some of the fields, for example, smart city, in the field of smart city, and the demand will be created, and we analyze different topics, and there will be ways that we communicate with the users, and we can tell our users, tell them that, okay, you have chargers with different prices, and we can provide the solution to tell them what time to use what size of a charger is the best at what time. So there are also topics about when we can exchange the different data, and whether there's a need to have a role to really negotiate or coordinate the exchange of information, because this need will be there, the demand will be there. We have to find our own position, how we can, what is the best place for us to be to support the development. So when we focus on the future, at the end of the day, we do hope that we can achieve the net zero goal. And maybe we can ask Mr. Yan to give us the last consumption. So if we think of EV as a big mobile like charger, what scenario can that be? Well, in terms of design, I focus more on product design. If we want to achieve net zero, or to achieve sustainability, personally, I think that when we're looking at the product design, the mindset is very important. One concept which I like very much is the 4R concept. If you go to the Toyota's website, you will see this concept. The first concept is reduce, So when you want to achieve a certain goal, for example, you want to reduce the use of materials, and there are ways to achieve that. You can reduce prototype. And the second concept is reuse. What kind of materials or what kind of components that can be reused? Maybe some of the vehicles and it has been used and we just refurbish it and we can use it again. The third concept is recycle. And the meaning behind recycle is that, for example, we see some of the plastic bottles can be recycled, but to be honest, we are already bringing a lot of burden to this earth. And what materials can be recycled, whether these materials can be recycled once or twice or 3 times, and you have to work together with material suppliers. And the fourth R is recover. It means that in the production process, what are the waste and whether these wastes can be reused and recycled. And if that is the concept we have in everything we do, we will be able to have more possibilities to achieve sustainability, especially on Earth Day today. And maybe MingYu, Mr. Jiang from Delta, can you give us a summary of your observation? I think no matter is in the UN or some regional initiatives, I believe sustainability is the goal and our expectation. And when it comes to transportation or EV, and my perspective will start from the re-transformation of the energy industry, because we have limited power generation. And this is the inborn limitation we have. So the key is how we can use this energy more efficiently. We see a lot of data analysis happening. And in the future, there is one very important trend is that a lot of smart systems, maybe in the past, in the future, when we are talking about the EV, maybe EV can be a mobile charger. It can be a energy storage device. And in Taiwan and in a lot of different countries, they're also working on energy storage solutions. So if we can combine EV storage, energy storage, and together with renewable energy, and combine with the back-end management and also to expect the demand. Or 12 years ago, and our company wanted to go into this industry, and we were very fortunate that because of that need, we entered this market relatively early. And for EV, the supply chain is long and with great value. As an operator, we are very we're working actively to explore different service models, and we want to work together with the industry, work together with companies and from different industries, and we want to exchange our thoughts and ideas. And because now it's very important that we accumulate these user experience use cases as much as possible. We want to exchange with different players as much as possible, so that together we can create more scenarios and to make it more human, as long as it satisfies the human needs, and it can have higher penetration rate. Thank you, Jason. Very quickly, I think the key here is that in the future we will see more players or more EV products enter the market. No matter it's 2-wheel or 4-wheel, we'll see more and more players and products in the market. So from scratch we will see continued involvement in this industry. And when we can expect that by using these products and services, we can achieve net zero. However, the production process is not net zero. And some mention about the energy storage, and because at different stage we just have to normalize the need for energy use and to try to satisfy different needs. It's just not only about having more power generation, but the key here is how we can use the energy more efficiently. And this is something that we all have to face, and this is something that we have to push forward. I think lastly, we can just open the floor. Anyone from the floor would like to raise your question to our panelists? Okay, we see one gentleman here. He just raised his hand. Today, we heard a lot of valuable knowledge, but one key is that we talk about net zero, or but for EV, it is not a net zero product. When we're talking about carbon reduction or carbon footage, maybe there is a better way to describe how effective EV is to carbon reduction, because EV is not zero. It doesn't equal to zero carbon emission. We know that, and maybe we can have a better standard. What do we mean by carbon reduction? And when we use EV, we know very well where the electricity comes from, whether it is really achieving carbon reduction or net zero. It's very hard to imagine what the world will become in the future. I would like to hear from your comments.
Let me respond to that. When we talk about zero emission or zero carbon, we're talking about maybe the 2050 timeline. Some countries even set the timeline at 2060, but we are indeed already on the journey to reduce the emission. Among the software products that we develop, one is used to track the materials to show the carbon footprint of each material or each process. In fact, many companies, especially those in Europe and USA, have such indicators to measure the footprint for different materials or process. And indeed, we are not yet there, but that's our direction. I would like to respond to that too, because our association will want to explain like this. It's of course not possible to reach zero carbon, especially for public transportation. And 70% of the emission, in fact, comes from coal fire or natural gas, the fire plants. But we must not forget that we continue to talk about having 20% of our energy from renewable energy. We talk about EVs and so on. We want more and more energy comes from renewable energy, but that's not the sole responsibility of the EV maker or operator. That's a responsibility of every one of us, because when there are more EVs entering the market, it's going to impose bigger pressure on the grid. Imagine that, well, 20% of the power coming from renewable energy, meaning that Taiwan Power needs a 1 gigawatt capacity to store the power. Of course, with the development of EV, with a smarter grid, we'll be able to have a more stable grid so that we can apply more and more renewable energy. That's why countries around the world are still trying very hard to develop EVs. Because if EVs are able to be charged with renewable energy, they can reduce their carbon footprint. And I know that King Coal in Taiwan right now has renewable energy certificates for all of their power usage. So Mr. Yan was talking about car makers reducing their carbon footprint, but we're talking about car owners. And the more green energy they use, the more likely that we can reach a lower emission. But of course, operators or developers like us need to work hard. And at the initial stage, development is still very costly. So green power generators would like to, of course, obtain some profits. And if there's a new power rate of $50 for each kilowatt hour, this will be very encouraging for renewable power generator to provide their power to EVs. And if we have really efficient EVs, we only require probably 60 kilowatt hour for a vehicle. It's cheaper than using gas. And then car owners will switch to EVs for cheaper energy. So that's why I say it's everyone's responsibility. If we go for EVs, then the green power generator will love to join. But just like Eric said, when Tesla's supercharging stations start to charge fees, users stop going there. That's simply human nature. So how do we address that? Every one of us need to share that responsibility. Yes, I would like to add some comments here. We talk about carbon footprint or emission, but many companies or factories are capturing carbon by different approaches, because some companies choose to plant more trees to absorb or to offset their carbon footprint. So in a global ecosystem, carbon is not the business of one individual or one company. It's everybody's business. Thank you very much, Richard. Eric or MingYu, do you have anything to add? As mentioned by other panelists, the promotion of EV is only part of reaching zero carbon society. It's going to be a long journey. In the process, everyone in the supply chain, different companies in the supply chain have different roles and responsibilities. So in the short term, EVs can reduce air pollution in the cities, and that results can be quantified. That will be a great start to encourage more users to switch, for more and more people to see the benefits of EVs. I think those benefits are being seen in Europe. They see that EVs are helping to reduce air pollution in cities. That's a very clear benefit that can lead to the change of people's choices of transportation, and that will lead to a more swift change, so that more people start to realize that every choice or everything we do can help facilitate development of EV. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I would like to wrap up. Thank you all very much. It's a great ending on Earth Day. Thank you very much for staying throughout the entire event. The EVs and the EV ecosystem require everyone's participation. We look forward to see more developments and more new business models so that Taiwan can become a more competitive player in the industry. I would like to thank all the panelists, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Thank you all.